The man who's been pacing his room at night, rewinding conversations with her like an old cassette that never quite plays the same way twice. The man who felt the sting of silence louder than her words. I'm talking to you because somewhere inside you, there's a suspicion, not just about her, but about the role you've assigned yourself in love. And if you don't pause to understand it, you will remain a slave to illusions that dress themselves as affection. Søren Kierkegaard tried to warn you, but his voice was subtle, buried under layers of irony and faith, suffering and despair. And now, long after his bones have turned to dust, his whisper still survives, and it was meant for men like you. Kierkegaard was not a cynic. He didn't hate women. He loved one, truly, Regina Olsen. But he left her, not because he didn't desire her, but because he knew the price of staying would be self-betrayal. And that's where this begins. Because most men today, they stay. They silence themselves for love. They shrink, bend, break, and they call it maturity. They call it commitment. But Kierkegaard saw the truth. The greatest hazard of all, losing one's self, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all. And what is more quiet than the erosion of a man's will in the presence of a beautiful woman? A slow, subtle manipulation where you hand over your freedom piece by piece, smiling while doing it, thinking you're being a good man. She doesn't need to control you directly. She only needs to convince you that your sacrifice proves your worth. And you believed her. You made her your purpose when you were born to live out your own. Kierkegaard called this despair. Not the sobbing, theatrical despair, but the most dangerous kind, the despair of not knowing you are in despair. He wrote, "The self in despair wants to be itself, but in isolation. It does not want to be itself in relation to the power that created it." Translation? You wanted to be your own man, but you surrendered your identity to her validation. You thought love would complete you, but love cannot complete a man who doesn't know who he is. And if you're honest, you shaped yourself around her gaze like wet clay, hoping she'd smile. And when she didn't, you questioned your worth. This is why Kierkegaard divided life into 3 stages: the aesthetic, the ethical, and the religious. The aesthetic man lives for pleasure, for beauty, for romantic fantasy. And here's the punch. Most modern men never grow past this stage. You scroll through faces, you write good morning texts like prayers, you apologize for feelings she caused. Why? Because you've been trained, culturally, emotionally, sexually, to believe your role is to please her, not understand yourself. You think you're choosing love, but you're choosing distraction. Kierkegaard said, "The unhappy man is always absent from himself, never present to himself." Look in the mirror. Ask yourself, where have I gone? You used to have clarity, vision, direction. But now, you're emotionally stranded, waiting for her affection like rain on a dying crop. And she knows it, not maliciously, but instinctively. A woman feels when a man orbits her like a sun that forgot how to burn. And once she knows that you need her more than she needs you, the power has shifted. You are no longer a man. You are a boy with a beard, begging to be chosen. Kierkegaard knew this pain. He wrote, "My sorrow is my castle," not because he liked to suffer, but because suffering revealed his truth. He didn't chase comfort. He chased meaning. And meaning does not come from the approval of a woman. It comes from standing fully inside your soul, even when you're alone, especially when you're alone. And so, if you're listening, really listening, this is your first step. Admit that you've lost yourself, not just in her body, not just in her eyes, but in the role you played to keep her around. And as you sit there now, maybe heartbroken, maybe bitter, maybe just numb, understand this. The manipulation didn't come from malice. It came from your willingness to trade your essence for affection, but no woman can respect the man who does that. And deep down, you don't either. There comes a moment when a man realizes he was never truly loved, only needed. And that's the wound you're nursing in silence. She didn't love you. She loved what you did for her. The stability, the chase, the validation, the narrative. But not your solitude, not your stillness, not your deepest self. And why would she? You never showed it. You gave her performances, smiles you didn't feel, compromises you called growth. And when she finally walked away, you didn't lose a soulmate. You lost the illusion you had mistaken for one. Kierkegaard lived this hell before any of us. When he left Regina, he wasn't fleeing love. He was fleeing the false self that love was molding in him. He wrote in his diaries, "I had to break with her or lose myself completely." That sentence isn't romantic. It's a gravestone for every man who feels like he has to die a little just to keep a woman from leaving. And make no mistake, the moment you feel the need to silence your truth to maintain a relationship, you are no longer in love. You are imprisoned in a fiction you wrote for her approval. And here's where Kierkegaard cuts even deeper. He tells us that the ethical man is the one who commits, not to a woman, but to himself. He embraces responsibility, not to please others, but to become whole. In either or, he says, the greatest danger, that of losing one's self, may pass off as quietly as if it were nothing. Every other loss, an arm, a leg, $5, a wife, is sure to be noticed. Read that again. A wife may leave, beauty may fade, but the loss of your selfhood, that happens quietly, while you're holding hands, smiling for photos, saying, "I'm fine," but you're not fine. You are fragmented. You were taught that to be a man is to serve her dreams, that to love is to sacrifice, that devotion means disappearance. So you disappeared. You called it romance, but it was self-abandonment, and the world praised you for it. They said, "What a good man. He provides, he listens, he gives." But Kierkegaard saw through that lie. He said, to cheat oneself out of love is the most terrible deception. It is an eternal loss for which there is no reparation. And men cheat themselves out of love every day, by choosing comfort over truth, flattery over authenticity, submission over strength. You need to understand, manipulation doesn't always wear a devil's grin. Sometimes it smiles sweetly and says, "I love you just the way you are, but could you change this one little thing?" And you do, then another, until the man you were has been replaced by a polished puppet, performing loyalty without desire, submission without dignity. And in the end, she loses interest, not because she's cruel, but because you became invisible, predictable, spiritless. She didn't betray you. You betrayed yourself first. Kierkegaard called this a sickness unto death, not physical death, but a spiritual collapse. A man disconnected from the eternal part of him, the God-touched flame inside that says, "I am." He writes in The Sickness Unto Death, despair is the misrelation in a relation that relates itself to itself. It sounds complex, but it's simple. You're out of alignment. You have forgotten how to be with yourself. You orbit her, trying to make her your meaning. But no woman, no matter how beautiful, can replace the divine responsibility of becoming who you truly are. And who are you really? You are not her therapist. You are not her savior. You are not a spectator in her life movie. You are a man, meant to confront his dread, to walk through the fire of solitude, to sit with unanswered questions and not run into soft arms just because the silence gets loud. Kierkegaard believed that the religious man, the final stage, is the one who submits only to the eternal, not to trends, not to social approval, and certainly not to a woman's conditional affection. So why do you still kneel at her altar? Why do you interpret her coldness as a signal to try harder? Why do you think winning her back will heal the ache inside you? That ache has nothing to do with her. It is the scream of the self you have abandoned, the self that Kierkegaard told you never to lose, not for love, not for lust, not for anything. You've been taught to measure your worth through a woman's eyes, how much she smiles at you, how often she texts, how warmly she welcomes you into her world. But Kierkegaard would tell you that any identity dependent on another's approval is a lie, a house built on sand. You become a reflection of her preferences, not a revelation of your essence. And if that sounds abstract, let me make it plain. When you change your tone, your beliefs, your ambitions just to keep her close, you are not loving her. You are fearing abandonment. You are not standing in love, you are drowning in need. In Works of Love, Kierkegaard challenges the sentimentalized idea of romance. He writes, "Worldly love is egotism, self-love cunningly transferring itself to another object. Let that haunt you for a moment." He's saying most of what we call love is actually self-worship, projected onto another. You love how she makes you feel. You love the story she completes. You don't really see her, and more tragically, you no longer see yourself. Look at the patterns. You initiate every conversation. You apologize first, even when she started the war. You plan every date, fix every emotional crack, carry the weight of us while she floats in and out like weather. And still, you think this is strength. But Kierkegaard warned us of this delusion. In Either Or, he exposes the man who surrenders himself to aesthetic romance. He who loves aesthetically loves with the tongue, not with the heart. That's what you became. A mouthpiece for sentiment, a performer of affection, a puppet in the theater of her moods. And here's the tragedy. The more you gave, the more you disappeared. Not because she demanded it, but because you feared that withholding anything would make her leave. So you gave everything. Your time, your focus, your ambitions. You became a man orbiting a woman, instead of becoming the kind of man who makes a woman orbit him. But Kierkegaard offers no simple solution. He doesn't give you a dating strategy or a set of rules. He offers you a mirror, a painful one, a mirror that says, the only woman who can love you truthfully is the one who meets you when you are complete without her. And that is a terrifying thought, because most men have never tasted wholeness. They've only known love as escape, as sedation, as a replacement for selfhood. But true love, as Kierkegaard defines it, is rooted in eternity, not in need. He writes, "He who in truth loves his neighbor loves him in obedience to God, not in obedience to hormones, not out of fear, but out of inner abundance." So here's the bitter truth. If you are in a relationship where you cannot speak freely, where your silence is your survival, where your spirit shrinks to keep peace, you are not in love. You are in hiding. And no amount of intimacy, no length of years, no wedding ring will sanctify that cowardice. Kierkegaard would rather you be heartbroken and true than adored and false. Ask yourself, would you rather be wanted for the mask or abandoned for the truth? If you hesitate to answer, it means you're still addicted to the mask. But masks crack. Sooner or later, she will see the emptiness behind your smiles. And when she does, she will leave. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you weren't real enough. And the haunting part? You knew it all along. You just didn't have the courage to stop performing. Now here's where Kierkegaard truly separates the boys from the men. He calls the religious man the one who walks alone, not with arrogance but with faith. The man who no longer fears solitude. The man who has faced dread and did not flinch. This man loves, but never kneels. He gives, but never begs. He shares his soul, but never sells it. You, listener, have a choice. You can continue numbing the ache by chasing her presence, or you can let the ache grow until it becomes the fire that forges your true self. Until you can say, I do not need her to validate me. I need only to become who I am. Kierkegaard would call that leap the leap of faith. Not a leap into someone else's arms, but a leap into the unknown of yourself. The part of you that no woman can complete, because it was never hers to hold. And now the ground begins to shake beneath your rationalizations, because the next truth Kierkegaard hurls at you is that your anxiety, the tightening in your chest whenever she doesn't reply, the dread when you imagine life without her, is not a flaw to medicate, it is the doorway to freedom. He insists, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Feel that vertigo? That is possibility stretching out before you, an open horizon where you are no longer the performer of her desires, but the author of your own becoming. Every time you reach for your phone to check if she's online, you are turning away from that horizon, clutching the walls of a shrinking room. Put the phone down. Stand in the dizziness. That spinning sensation is the soul reclaiming its radius. But dizziness alone won't save you. You must decide. Kierkegaard calls it the leap of faith, and men misinterpret this as blind devotion to a religion or a woman. Number, The leap is a plunge into radical self-trust when no external guarantee exists. It is stepping off the cliff of codependency with nothing but your integrity to catch you. He writes, "Faith begins precisely where thinking leaves off. You have analyzed her texts, her moods, her inconsistencies. Thinking has exhausted itself. Now leap into silence, into unconfirmed worth, into the raw fact that you are here to be rather than to be chosen. Imagine you do leap. You refuse to beg. You refuse to explain your worth. She threatens to leave and you open the door. Not vindictively but peacefully, because you finally understand that a bond secured by fear is a prison. She may test you, escalate, perform tears, but a woman cannot manipulate a man who is ready to lose her rather than lose himself. In that moment, you become what Kierkegaard calls the knight of faith, an ordinary man who moves with quiet strength precisely because he has surrendered every counterfeit certainty. People around him see nothing spectacular, but inside he has made the single most decisive act a human can make. He has willed to be himself before God, not before society. You fear this will make you lonely. Kierkegaard answers with a paradox that should echo through your bones. The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. The future in which you stay small to keep her? That is the phantom you'll mourn if you don't act now. Better the clean solitude of actuality than the haunted comfort of an unlived life. And solitude, once embraced, magnetizes respect. A woman may walk away from a needy man, but she will circle back, if not her, another will, drawn to the gravitational field of a man who stands sovereign in the storm of his own doubts. So cultivate practices that anchor you beyond her. Wake before dawn and let the quiet interrogate you. Write without censorship until the page bleeds truth. Train your body, not for aesthetics she might praise, but to remember that your instincts matter. Read Kierkegaard aloud. His words are weightlifting for the soul. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Study the wreckage of your past entanglements, understand them, then stride forward without repeating them. Resolve daily that no woman's affection will ever outrank your covenant with your own becoming. And when love returns, and it will, receive it as a gift, not as oxygen. Share your table, never your backbone. Offer your strength, not your surrender. Let her witness a man who can adore without addiction, who can cherish without chains. Such a man cannot be manipulated, because manipulation feeds on the fear of loss, and you have kissed that fear goodbye. And now you've arrived at the precipice, the point where most men turn back, not because they lack intellect, but because they lack the courage to be free. Freedom is terrifying. It demands that you give up the crutches of blame, the comfort of victimhood, and the sweetness of being needed. It demands that you choose, fully, painfully, eternally, to exist as a man who does not bend for affection, but instead burns with purpose. Kierkegaard called this the most sacred task of a human life, to become a self before God, not before others. And that is your final frontier, not to win her back, not to finally be enough for her, but to finally be enough for yourself. He writes, "The self is a relation that relates itself to itself, grounded transparently in the power that established it." Let that sentence slice through you. If your sense of manhood is built on her eyes, lighting up when you enter the room, then your foundation is not transparent. It is fragile. It means that the moment she looks away, you disappear. But a man of Kierkegaard's caliber, a man reborn through dread and solitude, remains visible even in the dark. He remains himself, whether he is admired or abandoned. His light is internal. His worth is not a democracy. Look back now. See the boy you were, the one who sent long texts explaining himself to a woman who had already emotionally left, the one who tolerated disrespect just to avoid a night alone, the one who thought her body was redemption, her love a home. You don't need to hate that boy, but you must bury him. He is no longer welcome in the man you are becoming. Kierkegaard would not call this cruelty. He would call it necessity. You cannot become whole until you divorce the version of you that was shaped by longing instead of truth. And here's the final whisper, the one that will haunt you if you ignore it. She cannot save you, even if she wanted to, even if she swears she loves you, because no woman can rescue a man who has made her his meaning. She will try for a time, but eventually she will resent the weight. She will long for a man who walks without leaning, who desires her but does not depend on her, who can walk away not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to vanish. You've heard of the one that got away. What they never tell you is that sometimes you must be the one who walks away, not out of bitterness, but out of devotion, to something larger than romance, something more eternal than her validation, devotion to your own divine unfolding. And when you live like this, something strange happens. Women stop seeing you as a servant and start sensing you as a force. The dynamic shifts. The manipulation no longer works. Not because you outsmarted it, but because you no longer needed anything from it. You've ascended. You've become your own. So walk forward now, not back. Let her memory echo, but don't respond. Let the silence stretch, and don't fill it. Let the ache deepen, and don't numb it. This is your soul reassembling itself. This is what Kierkegaard meant when he said, "Face the facts of being what you are, for that is what changes what you are." You were never made to be her puppet, her emotional sponge, her eternal suitor. You were made to be the flame, the mountain, the silence that does not beg to be understood. If this narration awakened something in you, if it stripped away the illusions, shook the foundations, and whispered a truth your bones already knew, then don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. Share it with the men who are still sleepwalking through relationships. Subscribe to the channel and support us through the link in the description if you believe content like this deserves to live. Because in a world that trains men to lose themselves for love, we are here to remind you. Kierkegaard warned you, and now you know why.